Today, I'm excited to have Erwin McManus. How are you, Erwin?
I'm doing so good. How are you doing, Eric?
Good, good. Well, I have continued to follow all the amazing things you are doing because certainly my years at Mosaic uh, just changed me forever. And I've always felt like you have been reaching out to intuitives into the post Christian world before people even knew they were living in a post Christian world. Um, what are some of the things that Mosaic coming out of the pandemic has done or is doing that you feel like others would be wise to try to do in their context as well?
Well, we live in LA, and more specifically, Mosaic is right in Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard. So the national spectrum is the more conservative the area, the more open it has been, the more liberal the area, the more closed it has been. So this has been the most closed area in the United States. And we still see people wearing masks here and still have stores that are not sure what they're going to do, and they're still ambivalent about it. And so I feel like we've had to face a higher level of not just caution, but scrutiny. Because if you don't comply and don't cooperate, it's really a bad look. And so we've had to kind of work through who our audience is, like who do we care about? Um, because like a lot of times people say, hey, you should go against the government, or you should, not comply. And I'm like, that's not even the issue for us, is that we're reaching a really liberal audience. I mean, the people here are as far left as they could possibly go. And what was important for us is to make sure we built credibility and trust and relationship with them. So it wasn't really about our rights or our freedoms or what we felt was even like the right approach. It was how do we posture ourselves so that we can be heard? And it's really opened up the city to us at a dramatic level. And so at first we opened up kind of privately, and then we kind of opened things up as went along. And we never made everyone happy, Eric. I mean, there's some people who are still mad at us because we didn't enforce masks well enough, and some people who are mad at us because we ever ask people to wear them at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always kind of one of those tricky things. I think the things that are mattering right now is I told our team, don't think big, think, like in a sense, like think small right now, and think about how do you build community? How do you build meaningful relationships? How do you help people connect once again? How do you teach people how to socialize again? How do you teach people how to have friendships again? So, we'll go big as we focus on being really intimate and building really textured community. And so I just tried to relieve all of our staff from the anxiety of, our numbers are way off from before the pandemic, or, how do we measure success in this moment? And I said, look, right now, measure success based on life change, and just focus on one person at a time and just watch how it rebuilds. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the things I watched in awe was how you mobilized people to start watching from homes, and you saw people all over the world do that. Even the way you and Aaron started the Battle Ready podcast and start
Yep.
talking about really current issues, which, a lot of pastors are afraid to touch any of that.
From Will
But
Smith to Chris Rock.
I was about to say, but you guys even went into Team Will or Team Chris. And
Yeah.
but I do think that what you're doing is through the podcast is you're reaching people who aren't even ready for a church like Mosaic, and a church like Mosaic is open to anyone. So you're even
Yeah.
going further out.
It was really strategic. We grew during the pandemic. So during 2020, our attendance grew all over the world, and our giving grew as a community of faith. And so I think only 6% of churches in America maintained their budgets or grew. We were in that 6%. And I think a huge part of it is that we just, Mosaic's always been really flexible and adaptive and very responsive to the crises around us. And so it was just an easy moment for us in that sense. And Battle Ready became our number one medium for reaching new people. Every new person we reached during the pandemic pretty much came through Battle Ready. And It gave people a place to have conversations. They were surprised that we were dealing with both liberal and conservative, and and treating everyone with respect, but going right at hard questions. And it was interesting and fun. And me and Aaron fight all the time, and that really kind of opened up people to us, I think, left and right. So that's been really fun just to watch it happen. We opened up Mosaic houses around the world. We told people, look, the environment where you're at is different. It's different in Berlin or Tokyo or London or Singapore, wherever it may be. So, contextualize it where you're at. And so we ended up with people who officially started Mosaic houses, and we just had dozens upon dozens upon dozens of them all over the world. And that proved to be a sticky strategy for us.
Yeah. Well, what's been really encouraging, and I encourage anyone who may have come out to Origins back in the day or to Mosaic back in the 2000s, you got to keep your eye on what Erwin and Mosaic are doing, because it continues to change and it's more ahead of the curve than most. One of the things that I love too, more recently in some of your messages, just talking about the lies that we tell ourselves, and then the new book, The Genius of, like, what are some of the new content you've been creating that you think can help these churches and these pastors that are trying to connect with people who aren't yet coming?
Yeah, one of the things that happened through the pandemic is, of course, like every conference shut down across the world, right? Every event, and so that whole genre of speaking at the Willow Creek Global Leadership Summit or Catalyst, whatever it is, all that was gone. And what reopened for me was completely the business sector. In the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, almost everything I've done has been in the business sector. And so I'm working with people who are atheists or agnostics, or they have a Christian framework, but they're living really hedonistic lives. And so all the conversations are people who are very far away from faith and would never necessarily even walk into church. And that obviously affects the way I communicate on Sunday. It affects the content and the material that we're producing. And The Genius of Jesus, the book I wrote during the pandemic that just came out this past year, I was really trying to deal with like a larger question of what is human genius, and in the spectrum of genius, is Jesus actually a genius? Does he qualify as a genius, or just as God? And then if he is a genius, what is his genius, and why hasn't it been overlooked? Because he's not on a single list of geniuses in the world. And it was for me so much fun, because I guess I've had a lifelong passion in my adult life of understanding human capacity, human genius, and also understanding spirituality, what it means to be in relationship to God, what it means to be transformed by Jesus. And those things kind of converge in this book. And what's fascinating to me is I just got a voice message from a business guy today going, I just read The Genius of Jesus. It's transformed my thinking. It's really reset my frameworks. I have yet to see this book break into the Christian market. And it's the weirdest thing, people going, Jesus isn't a genius, he's God. And I'm like, well, are they mutually exclusive?
He's the creator of genius.
Yeah, and I'm going, wait a minute, you're saying humans are capable of something God's not capable of. There is no human genius if there is no genius in God. And so sometimes I think it's the flatline thinking that we have to fight against in our faith. That's a challenge. But people without Jesus have been gravitating to this book. They kind of find Jesus fascinating. And they're definitely intrigued with the concept of genius, and the fact that I argue in this book that the only genius in human history that's transferable is the genius of Jesus. That every other form of genius is not transferable. You'll never be Picasso. You'll never be Mozart. You'll never be John Lennon. I don't care how much of your life you spend with Bobby Fischer. You're not going to become a chess master. But Jesus's genius is transferable. And so I'm really just, honestly, I'm just so excited to have written this book. And I think it's going to have a lasting effect, because in 2,000 years, no one has ever looked at Jesus from this lens. And I think it has the potential of almost creating an entirely new language, the way we talk about Jesus, especially to people without faith.
I highly recommend the book, the Battle Ready podcast, the Genius of podcast, where you interview people who are doing unique and creative things. I mean, I think these are ways that pastors can learn how to communicate to a non-believing world. And the best way to do that, in fact, I believe in this so much, for anyone who signs up for the Art of Communication course by Monday, April the 11th, and sends me the receipt, eric@ericbryant.org, I will send you a free copy of The Genius of Jesus. But I want to hear
Eric,
for a moment. Say again.
That's so amazing that you're doing that.
Well, so to me, I mean, I had the opportunity, and I feel incredibly blessed. You know, for almost 13 years, I was there at Mosaic, whether as a volunteer or your right-hand man. I had a chance to get a doctorate, you know, under your leadership, and spent, I don't know, $10,000 to get that doctorate. To me, what you're doing by taking some of the genius of Erwin, you know, what God has placed in you and what you've learned to do, by helping us as pastors and communicators learn how to do, you know, really put into words what God's put on our heart, is the most important thing we can learn. And so the fact that I've always encouraged you over the years, you've always been so great at inspiring, but now to tell us how that's not normally what you've done, you know, I feel like this is a really great opportunity for folks. And in fact, when you sign up by Monday, April 11th, you can actually be part of a Q&A community that you'll be a part of for 10 weeks. So talk a little bit about what the origin of the Art of Communication was, but also why someone should jump in. It's theartofcommunication.org.
Yeah, there's so much behind it, and some of it's very personal. My wife, Kim, you know, I've been married 40 years. She's been begging me for at least 20 years to either write a book or put out some kind of process where I teach people how to communicate. And I just kept putting it off. And then my son kept coming to me going, Dad, you know, you did a thing in your living room with 12 people at a time where you actually took them from very bad communicators into really the learning process of becoming much better communicators. And I'd actually forgotten I had been doing that. And so I was mentoring people in my home a dozen at a time, teaching them how to become the best communicators they can be. And it was brutal. It was not for the weak of heart. And we went in pretty hard, pretty deep, and we would deconstruct people's 3-4 minute messages and help people really refine their voice and their message. And so I knew I was going to move into this masterclass, mastermind kind of space, but I felt like the first place I wanted to do is I wanted to identify men and women who were willing to pay the price to become world-class communicators. And, you know, because before we even announced the price, there were people going, I can't afford it. And I'm like, how can you say I can't afford it when you don't even know how much it's going to cost? And almost every person who said I can't afford it was a Christian. And every person who said it's overpriced was like a person in ministry. And what I thought was fascinating was that somehow our faith has moved us toward scarcity, where we think we don't have enough, and also to really to a low level of value for excellence and craftsmanship. I've been a member of TED for probably 20 years, and because I value having the highest level thinking possible. And I began looking back, I've spent over $250,000 so that I could sit in a room with the greatest minds in the world, sharpening my ability to think, to create, and to communicate. And so when I'm asking a person to invest in themselves, because they're not investing in me, I'm doing great. You know, I've got a great life. It's really about investing in themselves. What I'm really asking people to do is care about yourself the way I've actually cared about my own development. Because you cannot remove your ceiling if you're not willing to grow. And no one else can move it for you. And honestly, Eric, a part of the reason I developed such a strong conviction about only offering things at the highest level is because everyone I've talked to, when they've said, we've done free events, we've done free products, whenever they have a free event or a free product, they have more complaints, more bad attitudes, and there's less that comes out of the meeting. When people actually pay for something, they value it. And when they pay what it's worth, they'll understand what the investment takes. I have been speaking to a group for 2 years now. Everyone pays $100,000 a year to be part of this group. I don't pay that. You know? And all these individuals pay $100,000 a year. And you know what happens? They show up. And they don't. You don't have to tell them to go to the meeting. You don't have to tell them to pay attention. You don't have to tell them to get everything they can out of the sessions, because they've made such a massive investment in their own growth. Now, this happens to be in the business space, but I wanted to create the premier communication process in the world. I didn't want to do something that was average. I didn't want to do something that was generic. And I wanted to create the best of the best. And so I just realized I'm not a cook. You know, I'm a chef. You know, if you want McDonald's, man, you can pick up McDonald's anywhere. But if you're committed to being the best in the world, the best that you can be, then I think this process is something you should really consider.
Well, to me, you know, most people won't be able to move to Los Angeles and live for 13 years under your teaching. I mean, I remember some of those brutal Sundays where you had me speaking 3 times, and after every service, you would give me input. But I'm telling you, learning how to communicate the message of Jesus is the most important investment. And I know you've already got entrepreneurs and business leaders that are signed up for this course, but I want to see as many pastors as possible learn how to communicate in an effective way, in a way that helps people move forward. And that's, again, what you've always done. And I know a lot of it is intuitive to you, but I also I've seen you all over the world. I had the chance to travel with you. You worked hard at getting good at this. And I feel like there are some very transferable things that I'm just so excited you put together in a way. 6.5 hours of content, 28 sessions that people can dive into. Plus there's this membership community and the opportunity to be a part of the Q&A. Just thank you for taking this time to do this for us.
No, this is why the now is so important, because on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time, I'm going to begin a 1-hour live Q&A. We're going to do this for 10 weeks. I'm not going to do it again like that. And so if people join in by Monday night, they get to be part of all 10 of these. And by themselves, they would be worth the tuition. You know, and I'm actually really looking forward to it, because when you get great questions, you get to help people in the tactical, and you get to help people in the granular, and you're actually getting to dive into where people really need that detail and that nuance. And you know, I love Q&A, and so I'm really excited. I'm welcoming every kind of question, and then we're also like throwing out there that if some people want to be guinea pigs, we're going to pick some people. We're going to take their message, and we're going to do an autopsy on a living thing. We're going to take their message and break it down, tear it up, so that everyone can learn from it. And so what we're having people submit their messages. Me and my team will watch it. You should be one of those, because you're a great evaluator too. Yeah. World with me. So I may have been hard on you, but you were hard on other people.
Well, I love, I mean, you're just, the whole environment at Mosaic fosters not just creativity, but excellence. And the fact you're opening this up to the world gives us a chance to, you know, see more people connect and make a difference where they are. So thank you, Erwin, for all that you're doing. Geniusof.com, I think it is. Yeah, geniusof.com, theartofcommunication.org. Of course, you can always go to erwinmcmanus.com and mosaic.org. Erwin, thanks for what you're doing. Keep up the great work, and excited to see what's coming next.
Hey, thank you so much, Eric. You too, man. You're always creating, always inventing, always breaking new ground. It's fun to watch your life from a distance.